Viewers, good day. Key has a very special or profound meaning in the overall imagination of the Palestinian Arabs. That a very small or tiny key pin can speak much louder than the entire UNGA speech of Palestinian National Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, who is also widely known as Abu Mazen, is a fact that has found its best expression from the anger and frustration of Israel. According to Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the display of key pin on the jacket of Abu Mazen is an expression, a very strong expression of Palestinian desire to annihilate or eliminate Israel.
One small accessory worn by the Palestinian president may have struck Israel's nerve. This is a recorded address by Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, delivered on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. In it, he called for disarming Hamas, ending the ongoing conflict, and establishing lasting peace to ensure coexistence between the two states. But what caught Israel's attention was not just his words. It was a small pin in the shape of a key that Abbas wore on his jacket. For Palestinians, the key symbolizes the mass displacement of 1948 and embodies the demand for the right of return to their lands. Israel's foreign ministry, however, posted on X that the gesture represents, in its view, a desire to destroy Israel, urging Arab states that host Palestinians to grant them citizenship, a stance reflecting Israel's continued rejection of the right of return.
As I stated earlier, that key or miftah has a profound place or meaning in the overall imagination or sensibilities of the Palestinian Arabs, because key symbolizes their right to return. The Nakba or catastrophe is Israeli ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian Arabs in 1948 through violent displacement and dispossession of their land, property, and belongings. During the events of Nakba, Palestinians suffered the destruction of their culture, fragmentation of society, and loss of national identity, political rights, and national aspirations.
97, the first Zionist Congress is held. The first Zionist Congress convened, led by Theodor Herzl, an Austro-Hungarian journalist seeking a Jewish homeland in Palestine, spurred by widespread anti-Semitism in Europe. Fast forward to 1917, the Balfour Declaration. A letter from the British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to Lord Baron Rothschild, the wealthy figurehead of the British Jewish community, expresses support for the Zionist objectives to establish a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, which was occupied by the UK after the defeat of the Ottomans in World War I. 1920, the creation of the Haganah, a terrorist militia formed by Zionist settlers that conducted numerous massacres of Palestinians with the goal of driving them off their land by force and seizing their properties, paving the way for an Israeli state. The tension escalates. By 1936, Jewish immigration into Palestine reaches its peak. More than 350,000 Jews had migrated to Palestine over the course of just a couple of decades, mostly from Europe, boosting the Jewish population in Palestine from roughly 3% in the late 19th century to over 30%. Pressure mounts as indigenous Palestinians deal with land dispositions and economic hardship due to the massive influx of Jews and subsequent demographic shift leading to the 1936 to 1939 Great Arab Revolt. Palestinians stage an uprising, fighting for their land and livelihoods, but face brutal suppression at the hands of British troops. Over 5,000 Palestinians are killed, nearly 15,000 wounded. British forces demolish Palestinian neighborhoods and impose a harsh military occupation. By the 1940s, new Zionist terrorist militias, the Irgun and the Stern Gang, emerge. Alongside the Haganah, they target British forces and Palestinian civilians, using violence to force Britain's hand. In 1946, the Irgun bombs the British administrative headquarters in Jerusalem's King's David Hotel, killing 96. 1947. The UN steps in with its partition plan. On November 29, 1947, the intergovernmental body proposes partitioning Palestine into two states, one Jewish and one Christian and Muslim Arab, but allocates over half of the land to the Jewish minority, which owned less than 7% of Palestinian land, ignoring Arab opposition. In 1948, Zionist militias commit at least 30 documented massacres at the start of what becomes known as the Nakba, or the catastrophe. The April 1948 Deir Yassin massacre is the most notorious among them. The Irgun and the Stern Gang slaughter more than 100 Palestinian men, women and children in the village of Deir Yassin. 2 days later, the Haganah illegally occupies what remains. It's May 14, 1948. Zionist leaders declare the establishment of the State of Israel, and just 1 day later, the US recognizes Israel as a state. The Nakba, 1948. Zionist militias, the Haganah, Irgun and Stern Gang violently expel over 750,000 Palestinians, 80% of the Palestinian population at the time, from their land, stealing or destroying their homes. Over 2 years, more than 400 towns and villages are entirely destroyed. 15,000 Palestinians are killed. Thousands more are left homeless and stateless, scattered across refugee camps throughout the region. In 1950, Israel's Knesset passes the law of return, granting every Jew around the world the right to settle in Israel while denying these same rights to Palestinians.
There exists near consensus in the world about the history of the horrors that visited the Palestinian Arabs during An-Nakba, that Israel or the Zionists carried out ethnic cleansing or genocide, is a fact that has been admitted or conceded by even Benny Morris, a highly conservative, right-wing, revisionist Israeli historian.
That the pattern of where Arab civilians ended up remaining in 48 Israel seems to be tied either directly or partially to the individual intentions of generals and other militia leaders. So for instance, in the north, you end up having a much larger resident Arab population than you do in the Tel Aviv-Jerusalem corridor and the south. So how would you characterize the difference in the mentalities of the generals and the particular events that occurred in those different areas?
Look, there are hardline generals and there are softer generals. And the hardline generals, some of them coming from the Achdut Avodah, part of Mapam, like Igal Alon, commander of Southern Front at the end of the war, commander of the Lida Ramle operation in the middle of the war, they didn't want Arabs to stay behind. They saw them as a threat, as a fifth column potentially. These are the enemies and we don't want them to be here. Arab populations in general. And you've got other commanders.
The very sight of such old-fashioned key is a major source of hope, yearning, nostalgia and optimism for every Palestinian Arab. It is interesting to note that both Arabic and Hebrew or Ibrani languages, the principal Semitic languages, have almost identical or similar words for key. In Arabic, it is miftah, while in Hebrew or Ibrani, it is ha-miftah. أنا سرفراز أحمد نائب رئيس التحرير في جديدة كراسي باكستان.